Welcome to Starbound Valor HFY. Subscribe now and dive into daily epic sci-fi adventures, where humanity always rises. The alien fleet moved slowly through deep space, calm and confident. Hundreds of warships followed the flagship of the Carthan Empire. Their metal hulls reflected distant stars. To them, this mission was simple. They were expanding. They were powerful. No one had ever stopped them before. Ahead of them was a dark region marked clearly on every galactic map. Terran Space. Do not enter. The warning had been there for centuries. No trade routes passed through it. No patrols were ever seen. It was silent. Too silent. The Carthan admiral stood on the command deck, tall and proud. He looked at the warning symbol with amusement. He had read the old stories. Humans were loud, emotional, and divided. Their wars were internal. Their empire was quiet because it was weak. He believed silence meant fear. He ordered the fleet to continue forward. The borderline was close now. Some junior officers felt uneasy. They had heard rumors. Entire fleets had vanished near this base. No wreckage. No survivors. But rumors did not stop empires. As the fleet crossed the final navigation point, every screen on every ship suddenly went dark. For a single second, there was nothing. Then the systems came back online by themselves. A single message appeared, written in simple symbols that every species could read. The voice that followed was calm, clear, and emotionless. You are approaching Terran sovereign space. This is a final warning. Turn back immediately. There was no threat in the tone. No anger. Just fact. The command deck went silent. Officers looked at their admiral, waiting. He laughed. A short, sharp sound filled the room. That is it, he said. One message. No fleet. No weapons. He ordered the message ignored. He told his crew to record it. This would be proof of Terran weakness. The fleet advanced another step forward. That step changed everything. Far away, hidden beyond sight, Terran command watched. Humans did not shout. They did not rush. They observed. Massive sensors tracked every alien ship, every power signal, every weapon system. Artificial intelligence calculated outcomes with cold accuracy. A single human officer spoke quietly. They were warned. Another replied. Trespass probability confirmed. No emotion followed those words. Only process. Back on the alien flagship, strange things began to happen. Long-range scanners failed first. Then internal communication lagged. Not shut down. Just delayed. Enough to cause confusion. The stars outside seemed to dim slightly, as if space itself was closing in. The admiral demanded reports. No enemy ships were visible. No weapons fire was detected. Yet fear began to spread. Silence pressed against the crew like weight. Another message appeared. This time, it did not come with sound. Only text. Trespass detected. Retreat window, 60 seconds. The countdown appeared below it. The admiral hesitated. 60 seconds felt long and short at the same time. He told himself this was a trick. Psychological warfare. Humans were known for words. He ordered the fleet to hold position. At Terran command, the countdown reached 0. A new status appeared on human screens. Trespass confirmed. Ancient Terran defense laws activated automatically. These laws were written after humanity nearly destroyed itself long ago. They were not made for negotiation. They were made for survival. In the alien fleet, nothing exploded. No alarm screamed. One cruiser at the edge of the formation simply vanished. It did not break apart. It did not burn. It was there, and then it was not. Space closed where it had been. The crew froze in horror. Sensors showed no energy spike. No debris. Just absence. Panic spread instantly. The admiral shouted orders, but systems refused to respond correctly. Another ship disappeared. Then another. The fleet tried to turn back. Engines failed to align. Navigation was disrupted by forces they did not understand. Terran weapons were not loud. They were precise. They did not waste energy. They removed threats. The admiral finally understood. This was not a warning zone. This was an execution boundary. Terran space was not empty. It was controlled. He ordered a full retreat. His voice shook for the first time in his career. But Terran Command did not chase. They did not need to. They controlled the space itself. A final Terran message appeared, broadcast to every surviving alien ship. Terran Space authorizes Phase 1. No explanation followed. No threats were spoken. The message ended. Far across the galaxy, hidden stations recorded the event. Other species watched in silence. They saw powerful ships vanish like dust. They realized the old warnings were not myths. They were rules. As the remaining alien ships struggled to escape, Terran Command prepared the next phase. Humans did not feel pride. They felt responsibility. Their borders existed to protect their worlds. Anyone who crossed them made a choice, and the galaxy was about to learn what that choice truly meant. The remaining alien ships drifted in confusion as space itself seemed to turn against them. Engines responded late. Navigation points no longer aligned with reality. The Carthan fleet had crossed many borders in its long history, but never one that behaved like a living thing. Every movement they made was seen. Every signal they sent was measured. Terran Space did not feel like enemy territory. It felt like a closed system that rejected foreign bodies. Inside Terran Command, silence ruled. Human officers stood at their stations, eyes fixed on layered holographic displays. Each alien ship was marked with a calm white outline. No red, no flashing alerts. Humans did not see this as a battle. It was a procedure. Artificial intelligence processed millions of outcomes per second, adjusting containment fields and control zones. One officer confirmed, Phase 1 active. Another replied, all trespassers contained. The Carthan admiral tried to restore order. He ordered emergency jumps, but jump drives refused to lock. The stars twisted on the viewing screens, bending in unnatural ways. Science officers spoke quickly, fear rising in their voices. Space-time readings were unstable. The fleet was trapped inside a Terran control field. This was not a weapon they could fight. It was an environment designed to dominate intruders. A new Terran transmission appeared, identical on every ship. No voice. Only text. You have entered a restricted zone. All movement is now regulated. The message felt final. Some alien captains pleaded with their admiral to surrender. Others demanded permission to attack blindly. The admiral hesitated. The Empire had never surrendered. Yet surrender required someone to answer. Terrans did not respond to requests. At Terran Command, a human analyst reviewed the alien fleet history. The Carthan Empire had destroyed dozens of civilizations. They ignored borders. They believed strength was proven through conquest. The analyst marked the file complete. Intent confirmed hostile by pattern, he said. Terran law did not require emotion. It required precedent. And precedent was clear. The first controlled strike began. It was invisible. A Terran system adjusted local gravity around 3 alien destroyers. The change was slight but precise. Hulls groaned. Internal structures collapsed inward. Crews were crushed by their own ships. No explosions followed. Space remained silent. The ships folded in on themselves and vanished. The remaining fleet watched in terror as physics itself betrayed them. The admiral finally ordered all weapons to fire. Energy beams and missiles screamed into empty space. They hit nothing. Terran ships were still unseen. Targeting systems could not lock. Terran stealth was not about hiding ships. It was about hiding presence. The Carthan fleet was blind, deaf, and surrounded. Terran Command adjusted parameters. Phase 1 was not meant to destroy everything. It was meant to demonstrate control. A human commander spoke calmly. Allow one ship to retain partial function. The system selected a damaged cruiser near the rear. Its sensors cleared for a brief moment. What it saw broke its crew. Massive Terran structures surrounded them. Not ships. Stations. Weapons platforms larger than moons, anchored deep in space. They had been there the entire time, silent and watching. The cruiser's captain transmitted the image to the fleet. Panic exploded. Some ships shut down weapons. Others tried to flee blindly. Order collapsed. The admiral felt his authority die in that moment. He realized Terrans did not patrol because they did not need to. Their defense was permanent, ancient, absolute. This was not a reaction. This was a boundary that had been prepared long before the Carthan Empire existed. A final message appeared. Phase 1 complete. Immediately, control fields tightened. 2 more ships vanished. The Admiral sent a desperate signal toward home, warning the Empire. He did not know if it would escape Terran control. He hoped it would. Not for victory. For survival of knowledge. Terran Command observed the transmission and allowed it. One human officer nodded. "Let them learn," she said. Humanity did not fear being known. Fear worked better when truth spread. The alien fleet was broken, but not yet destroyed. Terran Command prepared Phase 2. This phase would not be about control. It would be about removal. Humans believed borders mattered. They had paid for that belief with their own blood long ago. As stars bent and space tightened around the trapped fleet, the galaxy watched again. Empires would remember this moment. Terran Space was not claimed by words. It was enforced by design. And the trespassers were running out of time. The alien fleet no longer moved as a single force. It drifted in broken clusters, each ship isolated by invisible Terran control fields. Communication between them was weak and delayed. Orders arrived too late to matter. Fear filled every corridor. The Carthan Empire had entered many wars, but never one where the enemy could not be seen, heard, or touched. This was not combat. It was loss of control. Terran Command observed the disorder with quiet focus. Phase 2 protocols unfolded across human systems. This phase was not designed to frighten. That had already happened. It was designed to end the threat completely. Human doctrine was simple. Any force that crossed Terran borders after a warning was not an enemy to defeat. It was a problem to remove. The first Phase 2 strike came without signal. A Carthan battleship at the center of the formation suddenly lost mass. Its hull began to glow faintly as matter destabilized at the atomic level. Crew members screamed as walls turned soft, then transparent, then gone. The ship collapsed inward, folding into a point of light before vanishing. No explosion followed. Space returned to silence, as if the ship had never existed. Panic turned to madness. Alien captains shouted conflicting orders. Some powered down weapons, hoping surrender would be noticed. Others fired blindly into the dark. A few ships attempted emergency jumps, tearing their own drives apart. Terran Space allowed no uncontrolled escape. Those ships broke themselves before Terrans needed to act. The Carthan Admiral watched his fleet die piece by piece. His pride was gone. His certainty was gone. He finally understood that Terrans were not slow or passive. They were patient. Their silence had never meant weakness. It meant readiness. He ordered all remaining ships to cease fire and broadcast surrender on all channels. The message echoed through empty space. No reply came. At Terran Command, the surrender signal was logged and archived. It did not stop Phase 2. Terran law was clear. Surrender did not erase trespass. It only ended resistance. A human commander spoke quietly. Continue. Terran weapons shifted focus. Instead of ships, they targeted power cores. One by one, alien vessels went dark. Lights died. Life support failed. Crews were left floating in powerless metal shells. Terrans did not kill them all at once. They removed the ability to fight. Survival, if it came, would be slow and uncertain. One alien cruiser managed to regain partial control. Its captain ordered a desperate scan burst. For the first time, the Terran fleet appeared. Massive black ships emerged from folded space, their shapes sharp and angular. They did not move much. They did not need to. Their presence alone crushed hope. These ships were not built for glory. They were built for function. Every surface carried systems meant to control space itself. The sight broke the last remaining discipline in the alien fleet. Crews abandoned stations. Some prayed. Some screamed. Some sat in silence, waiting. The Admiral closed his eyes. He knew history would remember this moment. His empire would not be feared anymore. It would be warned by its own failure. Terran Command allowed one ship to retain communication. It was intentional. The signal reached the Carthan homeworld. The transmission showed empty space, where fleets had been. It showed Terran ships hanging like shadows of death. It carried one Terran message: boundary enforcement in progress. The Carthan Council watched in horror. Generals who had never known defeat went silent. Scientists confirmed the truth. Terran technology was generations beyond theirs. This was not escalation. This was containment followed by erasure. The Empire had crossed a line it did not understand. Back in Terran Space, Phase 2 neared completion. Only a handful of alien ships remained intact, drifting powerless. Terran Command reviewed outcomes. Casualties on the human side were 0. That was expected. Terrans did not enter wars they could lose. They entered situations they had already solved. A human officer looked at the remaining ships. "Select one for release," she said. The system highlighted a damaged frigate with minimal weapons. It would be allowed to leave once Phase 2 ended. The galaxy needed witnesses. Fear spread faster than fleets. As the final alien battleship vanished, space relaxed. Control fields loosened. Terran ships faded back into shadow. To outside observers, it would appear as if nothing had happened. Only absence remained. The surviving frigate powered its engines slowly, afraid of attracting attention. No Terran weapon fired. No message followed. Silence returned. But this silence was different. It was heavy with meaning. Terran Command logged the operation as successful. Phase 2 ended. Phase 3 preparations began quietly. Humanity did not celebrate. Borders were not defended for pride. They were defended because without them, humanity remembered what chaos looked like. The galaxy was about to learn that Terran warnings were not threats. They were statements of fact. The surviving alien frigate fled Terran Space with damaged engines and a broken crew. No one spoke during the escape. They expected pursuit. It never came. Terran silence followed them like a shadow, heavy and intentional. When the ship finally crossed into neutral space, the crew collapsed in relief. But relief did not erase fear. What they had seen would never leave them. Across the galaxy, the transmission from the frigate spread fast. Images of vanished fleets and silent black Terran ships reached worlds that had only heard rumors before. Trade routes paused. Patrols pulled back. Borders were checked again and again. For the first time in centuries, empires questioned their own strength. Terran Space was no longer a mystery. It was a warning made real. On the Carthan homeworld, the High Council met in emergency session. The Great Hall was filled with tension. Generals who once spoke loudly now whispered. Scientists presented data showing impossible readings. Space control, gravity manipulation, weapon systems that left no trace. One truth became clear. Terrans did not fight wars to win them. They designed wars so the enemy never had a chance. The Council demanded to know why. Why had humans built such power and then hidden it? The answer came from old archives. Long before humans reached the stars, they had nearly destroyed their own world. Wars had burned cities. Fear had driven weapons beyond reason. Humanity survived by learning restraint. When they finally left their planet, they carried that lesson with them. Power was dangerous. Silence was safer. Terran Command reviewed galactic reactions with interest. They had not planned to reveal themselves so fully. But the Trespass forced their hand. A human historian addressed the command staff. "This will change how the galaxy sees us," he said. "Good," replied the commander. "Then fewer will test us." Phase 3 planning began. This phase was not about destruction. It was about memory. Terrans understood fear faded over time. Stories turned into myths. Myths turned into challenges. Phase 3 would make sure the lesson stayed clear. Meanwhile, the damaged alien frigate arrived at a Carthan outpost. Medics treated wounded crew. Interrogators demanded every detail. The captain spoke slowly, his voice empty. He described space bending, ships vanishing, and weapons that did not explode. He ended with one sentence. "They did not hate us. They erased us because we crossed their line." That sentence spread faster than any image. Smaller civilizations listened closely. They had always lived in fear of empires like Carthan. Now they saw a power that punished only those who crossed borders. Quietly, they began to change trade routes to pass near Terran Space. Not through it. Near it. Safety was found in respect. Terran Space itself remained unchanged. No fleets moved openly. No broadcasts followed. To outsiders, it was still dark and silent. But inside, systems adjusted. Defense networks refined patterns. Terran law updated records. Trespass consequences were now proven, not theoretical. On Earth, far from command centers, civilians continued their lives. Most never knew how close war had come. This was intentional. Terran leadership believed fear should face outward, not inward. Humanity had learned that constant fear destroyed societies. They would not repeat that mistake. A Terran officer reviewed the final report of Phase 2. 0 losses. Objective achieved. Witness released. She paused before approving Phase 3. They will test us again, she said. Eventually. Another officer nodded. Then we will remind them. Far away, the Carthan Empire began to fracture. Border systems rebelled. Allies withdrew. The myth of their invincibility was gone. All because they ignored a simple warning. History would record that moment as the beginning of their decline. Phase 3 activation orders were prepared, but not sent. Terrans preferred patience. The galaxy needed time to absorb what it had seen. Fear worked best when it was quiet. As stars drifted and time passed, one truth settled across known space. Terran borders were not suggestions. They were laws enforced by reality itself. Those who respected them would never see Terran weapons. Those who did not would never see anything again. The galaxy did not forget the lesson, but memory alone was not enough to stop fear from turning into desperation. Inside the Carthan Empire, panic slowly became anger. Systems near the core demanded answers. Military leaders argued that retreat had made them look weak. Old pride pushed logic aside. The Empire had ruled through fear for generations, and fear was now turned inward. To survive politically, the Council needed to prove strength. They chose the worst possible path. A secret decision was made. One final strike. Not an invasion. A test. A single massive fleet would approach Terran Space again, this time armed with experimental weapons. The Council convinced itself that Terrans would not respond the same way twice. They believed the first response was meant only as a warning. They were wrong. Terran Command detected the fleet long before it reached the border. Sensors observed every ship, every power surge, every weapon charge. The humans did not rush. They expected this. Patterns always repeated. Empires built on pride always tried again. A Terran commander reviewed the data and spoke calmly. They have chosen escalation. Another officer replied. Then Phase 3 is justified. Phase 3 had never been used before. It was not written for conquest or defense. It was written as a final message. The goal was simple. End the threat in a way that would never be misunderstood. As the Carthan fleet approached the border, a Terran message appeared instantly on all channels. No countdown. No warning tone. Only words. Previous trespass recorded. Escalation confirmed. Final notice issued. The alien admirals hesitated. Some ships slowed. Others continued. Pride won again. The moment the lead ship crossed the boundary, space changed. Not violently. Quietly. Stars dimmed. Light bent. Time itself seemed to slow around the fleet. Terran Space sealed shut. Escape routes vanished. Jump points collapsed. The Carthan fleet was no longer in open space. It was inside a controlled volume, shaped by Terran technology. Phase 3 activated. Terran systems did not target ships. They targeted structure. Supply lines collapsed first. Power networks failed across multiple vessels at once. Command ships lost control of subordinate fleets. Chaos spread faster than sound. Then the true weapon revealed itself. A Terran field expanded slowly through the trap volume. It did not destroy matter. It separated it. Atomic bonds weakened. Metal lost cohesion. Hulls peeled apart like dust in water. Entire ships dissolved into clouds of particles that drifted silently away. Crews vanished with them. There were no screams. No explosions. Only erasure. The Carthan admirals finally understood. This was not punishment. This was removal. Terrans were deleting a problem from reality. Terran Command monitored the operation with strict limits. The field stopped at the border. No collateral damage. No spread. Humanity did not seek domination, only enforcement. Within minutes, the core of the Carthan fleet ceased to exist. One ship remained untouched, a command carrier filled with high-ranking officials. Terrans left it intact on purpose. A message appeared inside. Observe. The carrier's sensors showed the empty space, where an armada had been. No debris. No graves. Just nothing. The Terran message continued. This outcome was avoidable. You were warned. Twice. The carrier was released. Its engines returned. Navigation unlocked. The ship fled without firing a single shot. Terrans did not follow. The message had already been delivered. Across the galaxy, every major power received the same data within hours. Independent observers confirmed it. The Carthan Empire's final fleet was gone. Not defeated. Not captured. Removed. Empires that once considered challenging Terran space quietly abandoned those plans. Military budgets shifted from expansion to defense. Borders became sacred again. Within the Carthan Empire, collapse followed quickly. Worlds declared independence. Allies left. The Council resigned in shame. History marked the escalation as the moment the Empire destroyed itself. Not by Terran weapons, but by ignoring Terran restraint. Terran Command closed Phase 3 and locked it away. It would not be used again unless forced. Humanity did not take pride in what happened. Pride led to mistakes. They took responsibility instead. Borders were enforced so others would not need to learn the lesson again. As silence returned to Terran space, trade routes adjusted. Smaller civilizations began speaking of humans not as conquerors, but as guardians of order. A dangerous title, but one earned through action, not words. Terran Command issued one final internal note. Phase 3 successful. Deterrence established. Then the systems powered down to passive watch. The galaxy changed that day. Not through fire or conquest, but through certainty. Everyone now understood the same truth. Terran warnings were not threats meant to scare. They were promises meant to prevent. And breaking them meant being erased without anger, without noise, and without mercy. The lone Carthan frigate drifted through empty space, its engines barely functional, and its hull scarred by invisible forces. Every crew member remained silent, too terrified to speak. They had witnessed their fleet vanish, without a single shot fired against it. The memory of the Black Terran ships, the bending of stars, and the erasure of entire vessels haunted every mind aboard. They had expected war, explosions, and chaos, but not this. This was absolute control, absolute judgment, and it left no room for hope. As the frigate moved toward the edge of Terran space, the remaining crew struggled to repair their engines. They dared not activate weapon systems fully, fearing further retaliation. Sensors that once guided them now showed only shadows and distortions. Every movement felt watched, though no Terran ship appeared. The silence of Terran space pressed on them like a physical force. The captain, pale and trembling, sent a transmission back to the Carthan Empire, knowing it would be received. Terran power is beyond comprehension. We survived only because they allowed it. Warn the Council. Warn them all. The message reached the Carthan homeworld hours later. High-ranking officials gathered in the war chamber, staring at the screens in disbelief. Generals whispered among themselves. Scientists spoke rapidly, confirming what the captain had said. Terran technology was not only superior, it operated on principles the Carthans had never imagined. Space itself could be manipulated. Ships could vanish without trace. Forces unseen could control mass and energy. The Council understood the implications immediately. The humans did not merely defend, they defined the rules of the battlefield itself. Across the galaxy, the transmission created waves of panic and awe. Empires that had never paid attention to Terran space began adjusting their trade routes, sending messages of caution, and halting border expansions. Stories of vanished fleets and untraceable weapons spread faster than the speed of subspace communications. Some smaller civilizations that had relied on Carthan protection reconsidered alliances. They realized that Terran power was absolute, and that attempting to challenge it would be suicidal. Meanwhile, the surviving frigate approached a neutral station near the edge of Carthan territory. The crew prepared for landing, their movements stiff with tension. Medical teams treated the wounded, while interrogators and analysts demanded every detail of what had occurred. The captain described events in short, trembling sentences. How fleets had vanished, how weapons failed, how the stars bent and shifted. One sentence stood out above all others. They did not hate us. They only enforced the law of their space, and we broke it. The word spread rapidly among the Carthan populace. Propaganda of the Empire's strength now clashed with undeniable reality. Fear replaced pride in the hearts of citizens and military alike. Border commanders doubted their own plans. Generals debated abandoning systems before they, too, could be erased. History books would later record that moment as the beginning of the Empire's decline, not because Terrans conquered, but because Terrans enforced, and the Empire had ignored their warnings. At Terran command, officers observed the aftermath with quiet satisfaction. The mission had not required widespread destruction, only demonstration. The surviving Carthan ship had been allowed to leave intentionally, serving as a living witness to Terran power. A human officer noted, "Fear is stronger when it spreads slowly. Let them carry the story. Let it grow in their councils." The commander nodded. "It is not enough that they know we can fight. They must know that we will not be challenged." Back on the Carthan homeworld, discussions turned to politics and survival. The High Council argued bitterly over responsibility. Blame shifted rapidly from one member to another. Some generals suggested immediate retaliation, but scientists warned that any repeat crossing of Terran Space would result in complete annihilation. No one argued against that point. The reality of Terran supremacy had become unavoidable. Across nearby star systems, smaller civilizations adjusted their strategies. Trading vessels and patrol fleets skirted Terran borders carefully. Spies reported Terran movements with a mixture of fear and awe. In hushed tones, alien historians recorded the event not as a battle, but as a lesson. Terran Space was no longer just a border. It was a statement of absolute authority. Crossing it was equivalent to erasure. The surviving Carthan frigate finally reached a secure base, its engines barely functional. The captain provided full reports, which were immediately transmitted to the Council. Analysts verified the observations against known Terran capabilities. Every calculation confirmed the same truth. Humanity had designed a defensive system that was unstoppable by conventional means. The Council could no longer claim supremacy or invincibility. Their empire, once feared across star systems, had been humiliated without a single direct attack. Meanwhile, Terran Command prepared for long-term monitoring. Phase 3, although never fully executed, remained ready for activation. Every sensor and system remained vigilant, watching for signs of trespass or escalation. Humans did not celebrate the destruction they had caused. They understood the responsibility of power. Borders existed not for pride, but for survival. Trespassers who ignored warnings were removed because it was necessary, not because it was desired. As the galaxy adjusted to this new reality, one truth became undeniable. Terran borders were law, not suggestion. The humans had demonstrated control over space itself, enforcing consequences with precision and patience. The Carthan Empire would never recover its former influence. Smaller civilizations understood that the path of caution now lay in respect, not challenge. Terran Space had set a precedent that would shape galactic politics for generations. Even as the surviving Carthan frigate drifted into safe harbor, its crew forever marked by what they had witnessed, Terran Command continued its silent watch. The galaxy had seen the consequences of ignoring Terran authority. Stories of vanished fleets, bending stars, and the quiet, unstoppable power of human technology spread from system to system. Humanity had not sought conquest, yet it had achieved dominance through restraint and absolute enforcement. And so, Terran Space remained quiet, dark, and controlled. The survivors of the Carthan fleet carried a warning to their empire that would never be forgotten. Borders are not crossed lightly, and trespass comes with consequences that are both absolute and inevitable. The galaxy would remember. The Carthan Empire reeled from the loss of its fleet and the horrifying reports of Terran power. The surviving frigate had returned with evidence, images, and testimony that shattered centuries of pride. The High Council convened urgently, their chambers filled with tension and fear. Generals argued over what should be done next, their voices rising and falling in panic. Some demanded immediate retaliation, claiming the humans had not struck fully yet. Others warned that any further attempt to challenge Terran Space would result in complete annihilation. Every word spoken was weighed against the knowledge of the invisible, unstoppable force that had just erased an entire armada. The council debated for hours, consulting scientists and strategists alike. They analyzed the surviving ship's data, the bending of stars, the vanishing of ships, the control over space itself. No conventional weapons could replicate the effects. No fleet, no matter how large or advanced, could hope to survive if it crossed Terran borders again. Pride and fear collided in the room, and no consensus could be reached. Yet one truth stood clear to all. The Empire could no longer act with confidence. Its supremacy had been shattered, and its reputation had become fragile. Meanwhile, Terran Command observed the galaxy's reaction silently. Humans did not celebrate, nor did they feel the need to respond immediately. They knew that fear spread fastest when left unchecked. Small civilizations near Terran borders adjusted their trade routes, avoiding direct entry into the region. Even distant powers spoke cautiously in public, emphasizing diplomacy and respect for Terran sovereignty. No one wanted to test the humans again. Terran Space had become a symbol of absolute authority, defended not by aggression, but by the certainty of consequence. Back on the Carthan homeworld, factions began forming. Some leaders wanted to accept the reality and pursue peace, hoping to preserve what remained of their empire. Others clung to the old ways, insisting on expansion and dominance. Arguments turned to threats, and threats turned to plotting. Amidst this chaos, spies reported the movements of Terran fleets, attempting to find weakness. Terran Command, of course, anticipated this. Every movement was monitored, every message recorded. The humans did not need to respond yet. Observation alone was enough to enforce control. The surviving frigate, meanwhile, carried the weight of history on its deck. Its captain and crew were treated with caution and suspicion. Questions were endless. How did they do it? What weapons did they use? How can we defend ourselves next time? Each answer offered only partial understanding. Terran power did not rely solely on weapons or technology. It relied on strategy, patience, and mastery of the battlefield itself. The humans had erased ships without traditional combat. They had used space itself as a weapon, bending reality to enforce their law. As reports from the surviving frigate spread, smaller systems began to recognize the new order. Civilizations that once debated alliances with Carthan now sought direct observation of Terran behavior. Diplomatic envoys were dispatched to neutral regions, and merchants rerouted entire trade networks. Terran Space became more than a border. It became a lesson, a constant reminder that human authority could not be ignored. Across the galaxy, whispers of vanished fleets, bending stars, and unstoppable precision spread in every language. The humans had created fear without aggression, dominance without war. Terran Command prepared quietly for the possibility of further escalation. Phase 4 protocols were drafted but remained inactive. Humans knew that waiting was as powerful as action. The galaxy had already witnessed the consequences of trespass. Patience would allow that lesson to settle into every empire, every council, every fleet commander. Terran Space was defended not only by ships and weapons, but by strategy, timing, and the inevitability of enforcement. Those who understood this would survive. Those who ignored it would not. In the Carthan Empire, fear slowly gave way to grudging respect. Some factions began advocating for cautious diplomacy, sending envoys to nearby neutral systems to observe human behavior. Others, however, whispered of revenge. They claimed that Terrans were merely hiding their true weakness, that a clever plan could bypass their defenses. These ideas were dangerous, but the fear of Terran retaliation kept them restrained. Every generation of Carthan leaders would carry the memory of vanished fleets as a warning. Meanwhile, Terran Command remained quiet and efficient. Observation posts monitored the remaining Carthan forces. Passive sensors recorded every shift in energy, every unusual movement. Humans did not need to act. Presence alone enforced order. Every officer understood that power was measured not only in destruction but in control, precision, and the certainty of consequence. Terran Space was not expanded by conquest. It was maintained by vigilance and law. As weeks turned into months, the surviving Carthan frigate became a symbol of warning throughout the Empire. Crew members told stories of vanished fleets and black Terran ships. Generals studied the patterns of control and power. Scientists tried to reverse engineer what they had witnessed, though understanding was incomplete. The Empire realized that this was not a defeat that could be fought back with numbers or technology alone. Terran mastery was beyond replication. Even distant empires took note. Galactic councils revised treaties and adjusted boundaries. Patrols were redirected. Observers noted that humans did not boast, did not celebrate, and did not seek dominion. Yet the consequences of crossing Terran borders were clear. Respect became a necessity, not a suggestion. Fear, carefully administered, became the most effective form of diplomacy in the galaxy. In the quiet observation rooms of Terran Command, officers reviewed logs and reports. One senior officer said quietly, "They will test us again. Eventually." Another replied, "Then they will learn the same lesson, and we will only need to remind them once more." Humanity did not celebrate power, but it respected it. Borders existed to protect, to prevent unnecessary conflict, and to enforce law. Those who trespassed were punished, not for vengeance, but for necessity. The galaxy had changed. The Carthan Empire would never forget what had happened. Smaller civilizations would adjust their behavior accordingly. Terran Space remained silent, dark, and controlled, yet more powerful than any empire's armies. No one dared cross the boundary again. Lessons had been delivered in full measure, and the survivors of the first trespass carried the memory forever. Terran authority had been proven absolute, and the galaxy now understood the cost of ignoring a warning. And so the humans waited, silent, patient, and ready. Their borders were more than lines on a map. They were a law written into the very fabric of space itself. Those who trespassed learned that consequence was certain, control was absolute, and Terran enforcement was unstoppable. The galaxy would remember, and the Carthan Empire would never risk crossing Terran Space again. The Carthan Empire was shattered. Its pride had been broken, its fleets destroyed, and its leaders left trembling before the reality of Terran power. Across the galaxy, smaller civilizations whispered of what had occurred. Trade routes were rerouted, fleets repositioned, and empires reconsidered alliances. Terran Space was no longer an unknown boundary. It was a law enforced with precision, patience, and unstoppable authority. No one dared approach without hesitation, and those who had already trespassed carried warnings back to their home systems. Within Terran Command, officers monitored the galaxy with calm efficiency. Every movement near the borders was observed, every signal recorded. Humans did not need to intervene actively. The mere presence of Terran authority enforced order. Artificial intelligence controlled the sensors, calculating probabilities of trespass or rebellion. Any anomaly could be addressed immediately, but most of the galaxy had already learned. Fear worked best when it spread quietly, without open conflict. Meanwhile, the surviving Carthan frigate returned to a secure outpost near the edge of the Empire. Its crew was interviewed extensively, and every detail of what they had witnessed was analyzed. The bending of stars, the vanishing of ships, the control over space itself, all of it was recorded and preserved. Scientists and military strategists studied the data, trying to understand how humans had achieved such dominance. Yet no amount of calculation could replicate what Terran Command had done. Their advantage was not just technology, it was strategy, timing, and the certainty of enforcement. The Carthan Council convened once again. Fear had settled into the hearts of its leaders, replacing arrogance with caution. Some generals urged diplomacy, suggesting that the Empire could survive if it respected Terran borders. Others plotted in secret, whispering of revenge, claiming that humans must have weaknesses. Yet the memory of vanished fleets and the one surviving frigate restrained even the boldest ambitions. Knowledge of Terran mastery had shifted the balance of power permanently. Across neutral systems, civilizations observed the aftermath carefully. Terran Space became a symbol of absolute authority, a line that could not be crossed. Merchants and diplomats altered their plans. Patrols adjusted positions. Stories of the Carthan disaster spread from system to system. Even worlds that had never interacted with humans understood the lesson. Trespass into Terran Space was deadly. Fear now accompanied every strategy meeting, every fleet deployment, and every decision regarding trade routes near the border. Terran Command did not celebrate. Victory was not measured in destruction or conquest. It was measured in order, enforcement, and the prevention of future conflict. Officers reviewed logs of the previous operations, noting every detail. The surviving Carthan ship had been allowed to escape intentionally. Its purpose was to serve as a witness, a living reminder of the consequences of trespass. The galaxy would remember because the story had been carried back by those who had lived through it. The humans prepared quietly for the future. Phase 4 protocols were drafted but not activated. Observation remained the priority. The galaxy had learned, but patience ensured that the lesson settled deeply. Enforcement would not need to be repeated often. Memory and fear would maintain order. Terran borders were not expanded by conquest. They were protected by vigilance and law. Those who respected them would survive. Those who ignored them would be erased. In the Carthan Empire, dissent grew. Some worlds chose independence, seeing the central authority weaken beyond repair. Others began sending envoys to neighboring systems, seeking alliances or protection. The surviving leaders understood that the Empire could no longer rely on pride or intimidation. Terran Space had demonstrated that respect and caution were the only way to survive. The lesson was harsh but clear. The Empire would never regain its former dominance. The surviving frigate became a permanent reminder. Its crew shared their experiences, detailing the precision, patience, and absolute control demonstrated by Terran forces. Generals studied the tactics. Scientists attempted to replicate the technology, though they understood it would be impossible. Strategy now revolved around avoidance and caution, not aggression. The Empire's future would be defined by fear of the humans rather than desire for conquest. Meanwhile, Terran Command continued to monitor. Observation posts recorded every signal, every fleet movement, and every political discussion near the borders. Humans did not intervene unnecessarily. Their power was known, and knowledge of their capabilities enforced compliance across the galaxy. The survivors of Trespass carried the story, spreading fear and respect in equal measure. Every empire, every fleet commander, and every diplomat understood that Terran authority was absolute and inevitable. As months passed, the galaxy slowly adjusted. Borders were respected, and conflicts near Terran Space diminished. The humans maintained their quiet watch, ready to act if necessary but rarely needing to. They understood that restraint and enforcement together created stability. Stories of vanished fleets and bending stars continued to spread, becoming legends that shaped policy and strategy in countless systems. Terran Space had become a law written into the very fabric of the galaxy. The Carthan Empire remained fractured and cautious. Smaller civilizations thrived by observing human behavior and maintaining respect for Terran borders. Trade routes, diplomacy, and even cultural exchanges were influenced by fear and caution. Humanity had achieved dominance not through conquest or aggression, but through the certainty of enforcement. Terran Space was defended not just by weapons, but by strategy, timing, and the knowledge that trespass would always have consequences. And so, the galaxy settled into a new order. Terran authority was unquestioned. Trespassers had learned the ultimate cost, and the galaxy remembered. Silence reigned in Terran Space, dark and controlled, yet more powerful than any fleet. Those who respected the borders survived. Those who did not vanished without warning. The humans waited patiently, enforcing law, maintaining vigilance, and ensuring that the lesson of trespass would never be forgotten. The Carthan Empire was on the brink of collapse. Its fleets had been destroyed, its leaders humiliated, and its citizens filled with fear and doubt. Across the galaxy, empires and smaller civilizations watched carefully, learning from the Empire's failure. No one dared approach Terran Space. The memory of vanished fleets, bending stars, and invisible forces spread quickly. Terran authority had proven absolute. Trespass into their borders was no longer just dangerous, it was fatal. Within the Carthan Council chambers, arguments raged. Some leaders wanted to negotiate, hoping that respect could save what remained of their empire. Others whispered of revenge, claiming that humanity must have weaknesses hidden somewhere. Pride and desperation collided in the room. Even the bravest generals hesitated, knowing that any miscalculation could lead to total annihilation. Every officer and diplomat in the Empire now understood a simple truth. Terran Space was not to be tested. Terran Command, however, remained silent. Humans did not need to celebrate or respond actively. Their power had been demonstrated, and the galaxy had taken notice. Observation and patience ensured compliance. Every sensor and monitoring system remained active. Any hint of trespass would be detected immediately. Humans did not strike out of anger or desire. They struck out of necessity, to enforce law and order. The galaxy had learned that consequence in Terran Space was inevitable. Meanwhile, the surviving Carthan frigate drifted through neutral systems, carrying its testimony. Every detail of vanished fleets, control fields, and untraceable forces was documented and transmitted back to the Empire. The crew, still traumatized, told their story over and over, reinforcing the lesson of Terran authority. Scientists and military strategists on the Carthan homeworld studied the transmissions endlessly, trying to understand what had happened. They could not replicate it. The humans had created a system beyond conventional comprehension, a perfect combination of technology, strategy, and enforcement. As the Empire struggled to recover, smaller civilizations adjusted their behavior. Trade routes near Terran Space were rerouted. Patrols were reinforced. Diplomats and emissaries spoke cautiously, respecting the invisible line that had been enforced with devastating efficiency. Even those who had previously ignored warnings learned quickly. Trespass into Terran Space could erase fleets without warning, without explosion, and without mercy. Fear became a tool of governance across countless systems. Terran Command prepared quietly for any possible escalation. Phase 4 protocols existed but were inactive. Humans did not need to strike to enforce order. Their mere presence and the memory of past consequences were enough. Officers reviewed surveillance and sensor data daily, ensuring that any anomaly would be detected immediately. The galaxy had learned restraint, but humans knew that some would test the boundaries eventually. Their patience allowed them to maintain order without unnecessary conflict. The Carthan Empire faced internal collapse. Worlds demanded independence. Generals and council members turned against one another. Some believed that obedience to Terran law was the only way to survive, while others still fantasized about revenge. Every plan, every strategy, was tempered by fear of erasure. The Empire had been humbled, not by brute force, but by absolute enforcement and the certainty of consequence. History would record this as the moment when Terran authority reshaped the galaxy. The surviving frigate, now a symbol of warning, continued to travel through the Empire's systems. Its captain spoke of Terran tactics, the precision of their control fields, and the vanishing of entire fleets. Stories spread quickly, and every officer, soldier, and citizen remembered the lesson. Generals revised strategies, scientists recalculated probabilities, and politicians adjusted policies. Terran Space had redefined power, not through dominance, but through deterrence. Terran Command continued its quiet watch. Observation stations monitored borders, communication channels, and fleet movements. Humans did not need to act aggressively. The galaxy's memory was sufficient to maintain compliance. Lessons from previous phases had been absorbed. No fleet dared approach. No council dared issue orders to challenge Terran authority. Every system, near or distant, understood the power they faced. Humans enforced order without attacking, and that made the lesson permanent. As months passed, the Carthan Empire became cautious, its ambitions curtailed. Other empires followed suit. Borders were respected. Trade routes remained clear of Terran Space. Observation and fear became the primary tools of galactic governance. Humans did not boast, did not expand aggressively, but their power was undeniable. Terran Space had become a law enforced by absolute certainty. Finally, Terran Command issued one quiet internal note. Phase 4 prepared. Observation active. Enforcement guaranteed. Every officer understood the meaning. Humans did not need to strike again. The galaxy had seen what happened to those who trespassed. The Carthan Empire and every other civilization now understood the cost of defiance. Terran borders were not lines on a map. They were absolute, enforced by mastery over space, technology, and strategy. Trespass would always be met with certain consequence. The galaxy had changed. History would remember the events as the moment Terran authority became unquestioned. The Carthan Empire would never forget. Smaller civilizations would forever respect the boundary. The humans had not conquered, but they had imposed order through precision, patience, and inevitability. Trespassers had learned the ultimate lesson. Crossing Terran space meant death, erasure, and permanent reminder of human mastery. And Terran Command waited, silent and patient, ready to enforce law whenever necessary, ensuring that the galaxy would never forget. Terran space remained silent, dark, and absolute, yet its presence was felt across the galaxy. The events with the Carthan Empire had changed everything. Stories of vanished fleets, bending stars, and unstoppable control spread from system to system. Civilizations once indifferent to human power now regarded Terran borders with fear and respect. Merchants rerouted trade, fleets adjusted patrols, and diplomats reconsidered alliances. Trespassing into Terran space was no longer a choice. It was a sentence, a law enforced with precision and inevitability. Inside Terran Command, humans observed quietly. No celebrations were needed. Victory was measured not in destruction, but in enforcement. Observation stations recorded every movement, every signal, and every anomaly near Terran space. Artificial intelligence calculated probabilities, predicted trespasses, and adjusted defenses instantly. Humans did not need to act aggressively. Their presence, combined with the lessons already delivered, ensured compliance across countless systems. Enforcement without action was the ultimate deterrent. The surviving Carthan frigate drifted toward a remote outpost, its engines weak and its crew haunted. Every member carried the memory of vanished fleets and the silent black ships that had appeared without warning. Their captain reported every detail of what had occurred, emphasizing the control Terrans had over space itself. The bending of stars, the manipulation of gravity, the vanishing of entire fleets. Nothing could be replicated. The Empire had learned, but the lesson had come at a devastating cost. On the Carthan homeworld, the Council remained fractured. Some leaders advocated for diplomacy, hoping to preserve what remained of their empire through cautious respect. Others whispered of revenge, claiming humans must have weaknesses. Fear tempered ambition, but pride lingered dangerously. Every decision now considered the invisible boundaries enforced by Terran law. The Empire had been humbled, not by war, but by demonstration and enforcement. The Carthans understood that Terran space was more than territory. It was a law written into reality. Across neutral systems, civilizations adjusted their strategies. Trade routes avoided Terran space, fleets patrolled cautiously, and envoys studied human behavior carefully. The galaxy had learned that trespass was fatal, not because of weapons alone, but because of the certainty of consequence. Humans had reshaped power dynamics without firing a single missile, proving that patience, precision, and strategy could dominate entire empires. Fear became a tool of governance, spreading silently but effectively. Terran Command continued to monitor every corner of the galaxy. Phase 4 protocols were prepared but inactive, ready only if trespass occurred again. Humans understood that overreaction could create new threats. Their enforcement relied on patience and observation. The galaxy had already learned, but vigilance ensured that no one would forget. Borders were maintained not by expansion, but by certainty and control. Every officer knew the cost of error. The surviving Carthan frigate became a permanent symbol of warning. Its crew recounted the events repeatedly, ensuring that every general, strategist, and citizen understood the power of Terran authority. Stories of vanished fleets, black ships, and controlled space spread throughout the Empire. Scientists attempted to study the phenomenon, but the technology and strategy behind it were beyond replication. The humans had created enforcement that relied on understanding the enemy, controlling space, and using patience as a weapon. Smaller civilizations also absorbed the lesson. Observers noted that humans did not boast or invade, but their power was undeniable. Diplomats approached Terran borders with caution. Trade and communication adjusted to respect human authority. The galaxy had internalized the reality that trespassing meant total erasure. Terran Space became a benchmark of absolute law and control. Those who respected it survived. Those who ignored it disappeared. Months passed, and Terran Space remained quiet but vigilant. Observation posts recorded signals and movements, ensuring that no threat went unnoticed. Humans maintained control without aggressive action, proving that power could be enforced through certainty rather than destruction. The galaxy had changed forever. Civilizations revised strategies, empires reconsidered expansion, and the Carthan Empire fractured further under the weight of fear and memory. Terran authority was absolute. In the Carthan Empire, leaders finally accepted reality. Expansionist dreams were replaced with caution and compliance. Generals no longer sent fleets toward Terran borders. Scientists shifted focus to defense and survival rather than conquest. The surviving frigate's testimony became required reading for every officer and official. Every action in the Empire was now tempered by the memory of the vanished fleets and the quiet, unstoppable humans. Terran Command maintained its silent watch. Humans did not celebrate or boast. They enforced borders with patience and precision, understanding that true authority was in certainty, not chaos. The galaxy had learned that trespass would always be met with consequence. Stories of vanished fleets, the bending of stars, and the control over space became legends, shaping politics, strategy, and survival. Every empire, every fleet, and every civilization remembered. And so, Terran Space remained unchallenged. Its borders were law, enforced with absolute control. Trespassers had been erased. Witnesses had spread the warning. Civilizations learned caution. The Carthan Empire would never recover its former pride, and the galaxy had accepted the new order. Humans had not conquered, but they had enforced law with such precision and inevitability that no one would dare forget. Terran authority was absolute. It was patient. It was unstoppable, and it would endure unbroken as long as humanity chose to watch and wait.